I upload daily NBA content on this channel, so if that is something that interests you, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also real quick, there's a new episode of the My NBA series over on my gaming channel that is also nearly at 10k subscribers, so go subscribe over there. Episode 4 is going to be posted more than likely tomorrow unless something comes up, so go subscribe, go watch that new episode, and get ready for another new episode. But with that out of the way, today we have to talk about something unfortunate, which is Klay Thompson tearing his Achilles. Now, this is not something that I ever wanted to make a video on because I was really looking forward to seeing the Warriors come back. I know a lot of people had like fatigue for the Warriors, but really for me, my gripe with the Warriors only started once they signed Kevin Durant. The Warriors pre-Kevin Durant were one of my favorite teams to watch and one of my favorite teams, period. Like, Klay Thompson and Steph playing basketball was a privilege to watch when it was just them and Draymond Green and then a decent supporting cast. Once you got Kevin Durant in there, it became so unfair that I really couldn't enjoy it anymore. But I was really looking forward to seeing the band get back together without this superstar that just made it the best band of all time, if that makes any sense. So I was very looking forward to seeing Klay Thompson play basketball again. I was very looking forward to seeing Steph play basketball again. And I was very looking forward to seeing the Warriors be back again. And then this happens. So I want to talk about what this injury means for both Klay Thompson and the Golden State Warriors. So Klay, this is the worst injury that you can get in basketball, pretty much, that is common, I should say, because I'd probably say that getting your arm cut off is probably a little bit worse for playing basketball. But unfortunately, this on top of the ACL tear means we're probably not going to see Klay Thompson play basketball on an NBA court at least for 2 years. And the thing about that is, even though Klay Thompson is not someone who really relies on athleticism all that much, he is not going to be playing basketball on the NBA level for 2 years in a row. And that is going to be more impactful than I think a lot of people understand. Because really, like looking at Derrick Rose, for example, in the 10 games he returned before he tore his MCL, his original ACL tear kept him out for like over a year. And that's the reason why he was like so bad coming back, more so than the injury really limiting him. Because if you ask me, when I watched those games back then, Derrick Rose seemed relatively similar athletically to what he was. It was just the guy had not played NBA level basketball for so long, and then he got more injuries to kind of seal the deal. But previous, I think if he just didn't tear that MCL, he still would have been pretty close to what MVP Derrick Rose was. He just happened to tear his MCL. But in the case of Klay Thompson, not playing basketball for 2 years is going to be a big deal. Like, look at Demarcus Cousins, for example. He missed basketball for a little under a year, and that was obviously detrimental to him. And he is another player who was not somebody who was athletically gifted whatsoever. Demarcus Cousins was always a guy who thrived off of just being much stronger, not more athletic. The guy was far from jumping out of the gym, far from running down the court in 5 seconds. So that was not an issue for him that was supposed to be worried about. A lot of people thought Demarcus Cousins would come back from this Achilles tear and he should be the same. Even though an Achilles tear is bad, not an athlete, but that much time away from basketball, and the fact that the Achilles tear is just that bad is going to lead to things like that. So Klay Thompson, unfortunately, it's going to be a while. It's also unfortunate for a player who is a shooter, shooting jump shots a lot, even though it's kind of like riding a bike where you're not going to forget it. It's nice not to be rusty on it. Don't make any jokes about me saying that word. So because of that, there's a good chance that Klay's jump shot looks pretty rough when he comes back for a while. I mean, he'll still be good, but rough in comparison to him being no worse than the 4th best shooter of all time. So for Klay, I mean, I hope that he can come back, and obviously I hope he can come back and be just as good. Unfortunately, he's probably not going to be back until he's like 32, and even if he comes back just as good, it's going to be very unfortunate that we miss 2 seasons of probably a guy who's eventually going to be a top 50 player of all time, at minimum top 100. It's just unfortunate. But now talking about the Warriors for the next coming season, what they're going to look like. They just traded for Kelly Oubre Jr. I was really hoping that the OKC Thunder would hold on to Kelly Oubre just because, well, I eventually plan on doing an OKC My League after this Sixers one, and I wanted to hold on to Kelly Oubre. I'm sure a lot of people want to hold on to Kelly Oubre, if you know what I mean. So I didn't like that OKC traded him just for a first-round pick from the Warriors that's top 20 protected. I really feel like you could have got more value out of him by holding on to him. But I guess that's the direction Sam Presti wanted to take. I think he wants OKC to tank rather than being decent, just so that they can further capitalize on their draft assets. So, I mean, it's fine. But for the Golden State Warriors, what does Kelly Oubre bring? Well, he's just another guy who's going to be in that starting lineup who's pretty good. It's another guy who, I mean, for a first-round pick, that's pretty damn good value in return. A guy who last year averaged 18, 19 points on solid enough efficiency while playing pretty good defense and having a decent enough all-around game. So, Kelly Oubre, he's a decent three-point shooter, pretty good cutter, very good in transition. Decent enough dribbling the ball and creating offense for himself, though not something you want to count on him doing regularly. And he's just another piece of the puzzle. So the Warriors starting lineup next season, assuming they want to keep Andrew Wiggins around, is probably going to be Steph, Kelly Oubre at the 2, and then Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman. And they're going to have Kevon Looney off of the bench. And outside of that, for their bench unit, there isn't really anybody that spectacular. Kelly Oubre was also the player that the Warriors ended up using their $17 million trade exception on, so they don't really have any cap room after that. So there's not a whole lot to be done for improving this roster from where it's at now. I'm sure they can sign some minor guys. I think they drafted somebody. I don't know who, and I don't know how impactful that player is going to be, but I'm pretty sure they drafted a player or two, but I don't know. But right now, it's looking like it's pretty much just going to be that pretty solid starting lineup, and then the bench is not going to be good. And what's unfortunate about that is I don't think this starting lineup is that great in the fit department. While it's not bad talent-wise, even though I said Kelly Oubre is a decent three-point shooter, he is not a good one. He's just decent, around league averages percentage-wise and decent enough attempts per game. Andrew Wiggins is a passable three-point shooter. Draymond Green is a bad three-point shooter, and James Wiseman is a non-shooter. So that is 2 decent shooters, a bad one, and a non-three-point shooter, and then it's Steph. So the spacing for Steph Curry is not going to be amazing. So he's not going to be getting as much open looks as he'd like. He's not getting as much freedom as he'd like. It's going to be harder for him to attack the basket. It's going to be the Steph Curry show, and we kind of always expected it to be the Steph Curry show. But replacing Klay Thompson, the 4th best shooter at minimum all time, I consider him the 2nd best shooter of all time, in exchange for a guy who is about a league average three-point shooter, on top of that lineup already being about a league average three-point shooting team, or a below league average three-point shooting team outside of Steph, that's rough. That's really rough, especially being that the Warriors are a team that obviously likes to shoot a lot of three-pointers. And this year, they are only going to have 1 three-point shooter that's above average. Now, it is the greatest three-point shooter of all time, so that's a good player to have as your above-average three-point shooter. But spacing, ironically, is going to be an issue for the Golden State Warriors. And in the past, spacing was not amazing for the Warriors previous to Kevin Durant, because Steph and Klay were really the only really good three-point shooters, and then Harrison Barnes was decent, and then Draymond was passable, at least back then. And then everybody else on the roster, like Leandro Barbosa, could shoot threes a little bit. Mo Spates could sometimes shoot a 3. But that was about it in the spacing department for them, outside of the core of Steph and Klay. So it wasn't necessarily something new, but then getting rid of the 2nd greatest three-point shooter of all time really makes that problem seem that much more clear. I mean, we saw that in the playoffs, or I guess in the finals with the Raptors, where after Klay Thompson tore his ACL and Kevin Durant was out with his Achilles injury, Steph, even though he did still perform well, the Raptors were able to take care of business because no one else on that team was really shooting the ball all that well, and there was not much depth to that team. And this year, the starting lineup of the Warriors is not going to be very good at shooting the ball, and the depth of that team is not going to be good. So, unfortunately, I think this Klay Thompson injury means that the Warriors are really not in the contender conversation. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to be good. The team has Steph Curry. They're going to be good. I don't see a world where Steph Curry, as the player that he is now, until he starts declining, is going to lead a team to anything less than 50 wins, or whatever 50 wins will be with the 72-game schedule equivalent. So like 45, I don't know. So I don't think the team is going to be bad. I thought the Warriors last year with Steph, even though that is not a good team. Also, I just completely forgot about Eric Pascal. I mean, he's fine, but he also not a three-point shooter, but he's a decent player off the bench. But last year, the Warriors, I think they would have been a playoff team just as Steph did not break his hand. Unfortunately, he did, so that held them back. But Steph is a good enough player that I think he could pretty much single-handedly take a mediocre roster to a playoff spot. But I don't think they're going to be a top 3 seed. I would probably predict them being like a 5, maybe even a 6 seed. Just because I think the mediocre shooting outside of Steph, and even below average shooting really, not even just mediocre, is going to bite them. And unfortunately, Klay's injury highlighted the issue with this roster, which is that outside of Steph and Klay, nothing amazing here. I mean, Kelly Ubray is amazing to look at, but he's not an amazing player. He's pretty good. Andrew Wiggins, I think, can be decent within Golden State's system, though I think Klay Thompson was going to be a big part of helping Andrew be pretty good. Draymond Green has been actively declining. They also have everything locked up in salary. James Wiseman is not a rookie that I believe is going to be amazing. I don't think he's going to be amazing, period, based on what other people have said about him, but he's also just not going to be like a win now guy right out of the gate. He's going to be a solid enough filler at the center position early on. And just overall, this Warriors team, this is rough. This is very rough. Not seeing Klay Thompson is rough. Him being out is rough. Yeah, my prediction for the Warriors next season is they're probably like a 5 or 4 seed in the Western Conference. Steph has an amazing season. The supporting cast is passable, but they're not more than passable. So, yeah. That's unfortunate. Go subscribe to that gaming channel once more. Even if you do not enjoy typical 2K content, mine is pretty unique. It's very in-depth basketball-wise rather than really focusing on the game itself. So go subscribe over there. Go watch those videos. But that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this. And cue the outro music.